I never know if it's working or not. Hello, welcome back. So I'm going to get straight on the mat and we're going to do some hip releases because having sat down the neck and the throat, my hips feel just a little bit stodgy, stuck. So if you need to take some centering moments, please just sit for a moment, stand for a moment, lie for a moment with some breath. Otherwise, we're going to take it into some cat-cow movements. Just get into a little bit of what's happening, where is the movement feeling stuck. Now we've just freed up the whole of the neck, so my shoulders feel pretty awesome. I'm kind of in a different place and my furniture's a little bit on top of me. So I can feel now this congestion a little bit down into my back and my hips. So let's open up the hips a little bit, I think. A little bit of circling, a little bit of movement, just find whatever you need to find. And then we're going to circle out the hip, just to mobilize into the hip area. Be careful of how you're moving this. I mean, I often notice in physical classes that the movement isn't particularly circular, but this is a circular joint. So try and make sure you're leading with the hip, and you can see the rotation through the knee. So feel that rotation being as circular as you can. Some people they cheat one corner and they don't really take it into full circle. But in your own limit, obviously don't try and force it. Mine's a little clicky. Into forward and back movement. It's very linear, but obviously we do work in a linear way, but we want to try and mobilize it into full rotation. Open and close it. So rather than circular, open and close. Notice that the support knee, that's my right side, the glute is going to be working nicely for you. So be aware of that. Notice if you're gripping too tight. Notice the breath. So we want an inhale, exhale, just to accompany that. Let's just give that a little bit of a rest, just to free up that poor support hip. Might have overworked a little bit. Oh, I did some stairs yesterday. Gosh, we set ourselves a goal that we should be able to do the whole 5 stories at the multi-story without it killing us. So that's mine and my daughter's new challenge. We're going to get stair fit. Let's do the other knee. So just take that into a little bit of circling of the opposite knee. Just finding that little bit of movement around so that we're just allowing or noticing how does that movement feel. Do it both directions. It's always very interesting if you circle in or out. Notice how that feels. Do the linear, forward and back. And it's very interesting how, to me, each side feels so different. Notice. You can add that into cat-cow. You can take that into a slightly deeper movement. And then open and close it. Just lifting it up. In the old aerobics days, this is called Rover's Revenge. I used to get a little bit faster though those days. Notice how this feels, where you're feeling it. Ooh, lovely. And just give that a little rest, a little bit of movement. Oh, so sit it back to child pose. Just allow that little bit of breath. If you want to support the head, if you're finding it a little bit tricky to reach the floor, just support the head and roll the forehead from side to side. Look at that lovely free neck now. And just find that breath. Now I want the breath to really be focused down into the pelvis. So where we have squashed our stomach onto our thighs, the breath is going to now be directed to the low back here and through the hips. So breathe into the low back and hips. You might even feel the pelvic floor muscles, so notice, be aware, pulling up into your pelvic floor muscles so the energy doesn't escape. We want to expand into the low back. And notice for yourself, can you see on the left and right side where we've got the bind happening in the hip here, which side you can feel over the other? because you don't have me to show you today, only in virtual. Good. Let's take that into a little bit of Cobra or Sphinx. Now, if you're finding this is a little sticky, so this is counterpose to your child pose because you've closed your hip area, now we're going to open it up. If you're finding this is a little sticky, please come in and out of it. And also take that into a circular motion because your pelvis is supported by your hips. So if your hips are a little bit sticky, then take it in a circular movement. So you can shift the weight over one side, drop the pelvis down, shift it across the other, push it back. Make sure you go both directions though, so that we're not just doing our comfy side. Or we can take this all the way down to the floor and do some floppy croc. And just find a little bit of movement here. Circling, so we're just gonna, oopsie, watch your furniture guys. Just circling into the knees. This is allowing a little bit of freedom into your knees. So if your knees are a little stuck, sorry, I don't have to move my body away from the furniture. And just rolling over the top of the knee where the quad attaches and goes over. Just gives that little massage around the knee. So if your knees are a little sticky, whose aren't? Lucky if you don't have sticky knees. And that again can be linear. You can open and close. So you'll feel across the knee. Notice how the knees feel. Knees, feet and hips all connected. You can just let this sit. You can let this rest. Lovely. And then let's bring that all the way back up. I just feel like I need to ripple that a little bit. So moving that through a cat-cow. So over the top of the cat. Then release the pelvis and open the chest. That'll allow it come through. And then push it back through the cow. So again, that's a cat position over the top. You then need to let go of the hips. Gravity will let them go and open the chest or pull the shoulders back. And that'll allow you just to move through your cat-cow, but releasing the tension around the hip flexor area. So we need to let go, but the hips drop. And you can do that as many times as you need to. I'm going to sit it back, I think I want to do an extended child pose. So, big toes can meet, doesn't matter if they don't meet. Knees as wide as your mat, or as comfortably as wide as your mat. And just bring the arms forward. And allow some breath in extended child pose. You can rest your head on one side, but make sure you change it so that you're not just doing one side. And just breathe again into these hip areas where we're binding into the hip. We want to send the energy down. Change your head if you're doing alternate head, or if you're turning your head one way. And I think we'll just do a thread the needle while we're here. So press one hand down to release one arm underneath you. Gently, gently push. We don't need to push too far. Now you can keep your hips low or high. Turn that hand away. This top arm can then sit to the back of your body, or you can keep using it to very gently ease the shoulder open a little bit. And just breathe now into the same space, this side body. Or if it's your hips that need it, breathe down into the hips. Notice where your body needs to be opened and expanded. Notice where you're gripping. And then gently push that arm through, extended child pose again. Take the breath again, notice how it feels. Which part of your body feels freer, which part feels congested still. You're only on one side, so you might feel shorter on one side body than the other. And then we'll take the other side. So push the arm down to allow the hand to come underneath. Gently, gently slide it under. Don't overreach, but just find that rotation in the body. Use the hand to either gently traction and help that twist, or bring it to the low back. Just depends where you want to go. You can bind it all the way through if you want to. I want a little bit of traction today to help the breath now into the side body. So breathing into the armpit, breathing across the back of the upper body, into the hips. Notice where you're gripping. My right hip flexor is still gripping, so I need to let that go. And then pushing that hand again to release it. Bring it into the extended child pose again. Notice that breath. And then very slowly bring that all the way up. Just close the knees back in. Ooh, interesting. Up to the tabletop. A little bit of movement around to make sure everything or things aren't congesting, they're not locking in. If you feel you need a down dog, tuck the toes, take that into a slightly longer space. Just notice for yourself, how does that feel? Tightness, where is it? Where can you feel the tightness? Where do you need to let go? Make sure the toes aren't gripping too tight. You're not pushing back into the knees, you're lifting the sit bones. Not pushing your chin towards your belly. You're not pushing your head towards your legs, you're extending along to the floor. Find that length through the whole body. Okay, let's release this into a couple of clicks there going on. Into low lunge, just finding a little bit of a crescent lunge. Movement if you need it. If those hips are still grumpy, give them a little bit of movement around. You can do the side to side stretch too. You can take it down into the supported grasshopper. Wouldn't want to do the full grasshopper. So this is really nice to open up through the whole of that hip area. Just allow this to settle down. Don't worry if you can't. If you can't entry from your lunge position, just bring your knees together, sit your bottom down, and then bring that leg forward. Extend the bottom leg. That bottom leg is going to give you that stretch. You need it. But be comfortable, but feel where the body is tense. You can have little rocky movements. Try and sitting on the side of your body, not lolling back. Make sure you are on the side. The side body gets a little bit congested down at the bottom here. It sits on top of the pelvis, onto the obliques. Let that breathe. Every posture breathe. It's really important that we let it breathe. Like a fine wine. And then just drop that back down. Roll it back up. You can bring the knees together to come back up. You don't have to take it up there. And then just come into an extended crescent lunge. And just extend it all the way up. Be careful of this back bend. You can take it into a back bend, but pull the ribs and the breastbone down a little bit. And then just move forward into, you can bring the hands down as well. You don't need to have them extended if you don't want to. Just to open up the front of that hip flexor. And just allow a little bit of freedom. Careful of dumping. Make sure you're not just collapsing into that hip. Inner knee moving in. Don't let it drop open too wide. Just allow that to open up that hip flexor. Ooh, mine's a little tight. And gently bring that back. A little bit of a hamstring stretch. Whoa, lovely. Make sure you're not reaching too far so that your hips have moved sideways. You want to try and keep your hips parallel. And then move from your sit bone. Move the sit bone back. Then you're going to get that stretch through the hamstring. And just be aware of that. And we repeat all of these postures. We become familiar with how our body is responding to them. That's why we don't reinvent. We don't keep doing different things. It is quite repetitive, because that when we get used to how that feels, we can then assess what we need to release, go deeper, back off. So be aware of that. Be aware of what your body's telling you. Very cliche. Whoop, bring that all the way around. Give that a little bit of movement if it needs it. And then we'll change sides. So we're going to bring the down into down dog first, I think. Take it up into your dog. Notice if that's freed up anything by opening up your hip flexors, and your hamstrings. The right side for me feels a lot freer. And then we'll bring the opposite leg forward. So just find that little bit of movement around. So nice circular movement around the ball and socket joint. And then your side to side movement. Again, don't forget you can take this down from tabletop. You don't need to take it from lunge into your ingrasa bar. Don't worry if this leg needs to move, if it's not as open on this side. Be careful of the shoulder slump. Very important we don't dump into our joints. And again, we'll just feel this stretch, this breath down into where the obliques cross over to the pelvis. And lats. It tucks a little bit further around, but you'll feel this all down the side body. And just allow that to breathe. Smells lovely. Always nice to stretch the body. And about half dozen breaths. Bring that back up. Bring that leg forward again if you've had to adjust your stance. It's absolutely fine. Into your crescent lunge. Don't forget your crescent lunge doesn't need to be the splits. You don't need to go too deep. But notice for yourself. Hips relatively parallel. So just find that little stretch across the front of the hip flexor. Arms can extend, but be careful you don't start to overextend through the back bend. You don't need to do the upper body just now. You can deepen if you want to. You'll feel that right through the front of your hip flexor. But take it at your own level. Mine's gone into the old dumping, so be careful of the dump. Make sure you're supporting your joints, your body. It's down to you. And then just bring that back up into the hamstrings. You can just move that foot forward. You can circle the ankles a little bit if they're a little bit stodgy. And again, the hips need to be square on, so square facing forward. You don't want to push that leg too far forward so that the hip then squishes forward. So you want to push that sit bone back. You want to push it away from you. And then you feel the belly of the hamstring stretching. Lovely stretch. The front of the thighs and the hamstrings often congest into the low back. That's where we feel that restriction, and they've got too tight. It feels really nice. Mine's on the inner aspect, so you've obviously got multiple muscles, so you can adjust the foot slightly if you need to. Adjust where you're stretching it. And then just give that a little circle, a little bit of release. And tuck it back up into your down dog. Tuck the toes through. Kind of snapping back the knees. Be careful that the knees aren't pushing away from you. We don't need to push anything out of our own limit. And just take the breath. Allow that to breathe. So let's just drop this back down. I want to do some hips, not the hips a little bit. Roll the legs through. Start off with a Baddha Konasana, bound angle, and just find a little bit of movement around. So this is just going to open up the inner thighs for you. Very nice. And just find that little bit of rolling around, which will just open up or give you awareness of where the tension's happening. We don't need to go deep. If you want to do more of a diamond shape, so if you want to move the heels away, then please move the heels away. And then start to just gently forward fold. Be careful of your pelvic alignment. So if we are sitting back behind the sit bones and then you start to push into your back, you will never ever move forward, ever. Come up onto your sit bones, make sure they're slightly behind you so that the pelvis is on an incline. And then once that's moved, you can sit on a cushion so that you lift your sit bones off slightly. You will then start to move forward into your forward fold. All forward folds need the pelvis to incline, to move forwards. Otherwise, if you're sitting back on it, can you see the difference? I'm never going to move. The mechanic, I can't move this. It's blocked up in all of the joints are locked into each other. And then just very gently allow this to come down. You can hold underneath the feet. It's quite nice to hold underneath. And just breathe. Breathe into the spaces. Where does it feel the breath needs to occur, to happen? Don't feel you have to kiss your feet. You don't. Just find those adjustments, those little adjustments that need to occur. And I can just feel this is quite tight for me here, so I know what's happening. I'm pushing here. Can you see that? I'm pushing my upper back. So I need to lengthen my breastbone away from my pubic bone so that I'm flattening my back out a little more. Obviously this is a natural curvature because that's the shape of my back. But then it stops pulling in my low back. So the more length I get, rather than trying to get my head to my feet, I stop the pulling on my low back. Now I can feel my hips more and less in my back. So be aware of where you are trying to reach when your body's not ready to reach. And we're all guilty of that. We all tend to think, oh, I need to get lower, lower, lower. Find the breath. And then very gently under the hands, if you're bound underneath. Whew, I feel that. Just bring the knees up. Give them a little bit of windscreen wiper just to make sure they still work. And then we're going to just take that into a wide angle. So bring the legs as wide as is comfortable for you. Doesn't have to be like a dancer does the boxer splits. You should start to feel this right up into the inner thigh here. If you need to do those little circles, wow, mine's really tight today. And just find those little circles and allow that to start opening up. And this movement will help you to access the release phase, and letting go. All of our bodies can do it. It's just being mindful. If you need to do a few little side to side movements too, I'm not going to stay in a static side to side stretch, but just find that little bit of movement side to side. And also twisting. I will need to do a twist soon. Stop this pushing my upper back. And then we're going to just take this forward. Same principle, your pelvis needs to be on an incline. If you're sitting back on your sit bones, you won't be able to move. So you've got to stick your bottom out behind you. Keep as much length between the breastbone and the pubic bone, and an angle from your pelvis. Use your arms, use your elbows, it doesn't matter how deep you go. And you'll feel the stretch down the inner thighs. Allow this to breathe. Please allow everything to breathe. Notice, so where is the pull coming? We ideally want to feel it here, but if you're feeling it in your low back, lengthen the breastbone. In fact, you need to traction yourself forward. Knees ideally are rotating up to the ceiling. My left one will follow me, I know it will, because this is not as open as my right side. So open up the knees, and again you can actually help your legs to rotate. Give them a little bit of rotation. You'll be an unsupported stretch to make sure you're engaging your pelvic floor muscles, engaging your tummy muscles, and just allow this some breath. Ooh, lovely. Keep the length from the breastbone to the pubic bone. Make sure you're not just trying to get to the floor. You can use blocks as well. Rest your head on a block. That really helps if you're a chin pusher like me. And just allow that. You can take the feet as well, but it's quite nice to hold the thighs. Just depends where you're at. But don't compromise your position. Make sure it's comfortable for you, but you can feel that stretch. And then ask those muscles to relax. On the exhale. And you might find with each breath a little bit lower. Doesn't matter where you are though. Okay, we're not going to stay there for too long, conscious of the time, but you can always repeat. Slowly, slowly come back up. Ooh, lower the thighs. Draw the legs back in. Ooh, I say, give them a little shimmy. Let's feel that. That was quite awesome. Give them a little bit of windscreen wipers, just get these hips to move again. Oh, lovely. Excuse me. And then let's just take a little release roll. So if you are a bit tight in your back, take this down, up and down a couple of times. Just notice for yourself. And we'll just do a little happy baby. So roll onto your back, pick up into the either side of your foot. You can hold the insides as well, it doesn't matter, but the outsides are quite helpful because the feet will tend to then flatten down. Whereas if we hold the insides, you can pull onto the ankle. So pull onto the outside edge, very gently traction down. Let the knees come outside the ribs, tailbone relax, so be careful that the tailbone's not lifting off the floor. And just let this open up your happy baby. You can rock a little bit side to side if your low back's a bit sticky tight. And just allow that, a little bit of breath. Breath awareness today. I feel there's a lot of breath needed in these spaces. Pelvic floor muscles need to be engaged. You've got open muscles in the bottom of your pelvis. So engage the pelvic floor muscles. It feels lovely. And just breathe. I think this one's really nice to breathe into the kidney space and the low back. And kidneys tend to hold on to a lot of toxicity, so either emotions or thoughts. So just breathe into between the mid and low back. And just let that open up these channels of energy. Bring you back into that neutral space. Let go of anything that no longer serves you. Lovely. And then just let go of the feet, hug the knees in, give them a little rock, a little cosmic egg. If you want to, you can draw your forehead up. I feel I'm quite happy now, just rocking this side to side. Drop the feet down. If you need to just release out a little bit here, just give them a little windscreen wiper. And then we'll do a twist position. So it doesn't matter how you do your twist. If your knees are a long way from your hips, you're going to stretch more into the upper body, the lower body here. If your knees are higher, so if you're bringing your knees up in line with your hips, you're going to feel it more through the trunk. And then obviously you can do all kinds of combinations. You can hold your foot or your feet and do the flapping fish. I'll get you into a little bit of a hamstrings, or you can just stay into this neutral space. It doesn't matter. Just find your stretch. Look away from your knees wherever they are. You can even cross your legs. That gives you a little bit more of a deeper bind. And find the breath. feel, I mean, mine are a little bit higher, so it's in this junction up the mid of my back. And then we'll change sides. So undo any binds that you've put yourself into. Draw the knees up. A little bit of movement if you need it. So if that does tend to feel a little tight, just flop it around a little bit, or some little pelvic movements. And then change sides. So again, the knees can be away. Feel that down the front of the body more. Knees can be higher. Make sure you're on the side of your bottom though, not rolling back. Or you can then bind. You can hold your feet if you want to. That's a lovely stretch on the legs as well. Or you can just cross the legs into a bind, which is one of my favourite places, and let it breathe. Noticing where maybe it feels tighter or just uncomfortable. For me, it's trying to get this undo the back bend. So bringing the shoulders to relax down to the floor. Into the breath. Letting go of any pushing or pulling. We've got the floor for support. We don't need to grip and hold. And when you've done yourself half a dozen rounds of breath or longer, there is no right or wrong. Undo the legs, roll yourself back up. A little bit of flippy floppy knees if you want to, or pelvic tilts, or hug the knees in. It's quite nice to just rock on the back, kidney space. The knees are a little flippy. Make sure not gripping. If you want to do bridge, just very gently drop the hips up, push the hips up. Notice where you're gripping. Obviously we need glute activation, but we don't want to be too tight. A little bit of floppy bridge maybe, just to let go of the tension that we're holding into. Doesn't need to be a big bridge, doesn't need to be a full back bend unless you want to. Just let the hips drop back down. Extend the legs, go into your Shavasana pose. You can have the knees bent. If you want the knees bent, just drop the knees together, supporting, or rest your legs on a chair. It's a really nice supportive posture. And just come into the mindful breath. Tip of the nose, down into the belly. Just notice how your body's feeling. Pick up into where you're up to. How does the breath feel? How does the body feel? How do the emotions feel? Bring yourself back to awareness. So if you've lost yourself a little bit on the journey, just come back. And give yourself at least 5 minutes Shavasana. Let this settle. Now you don't have to lie down, but it's good for the energy channels not to be bound. So if you're seated, it's lovely. You can go into meditation. But just allow the body a few moments, 5 minutes, of lying flat, to let the energies just redistribute. No blocking, no gripping, nothing. We don't need to do anything. Whereas seated, we've got to hold into the muscles. We've got to support ourselves. So Shavasana is the most releasing posture we can do. But allow yourself time to be aware of where you're gripping, where you're holding, where are these holding patterns. And we all get the same aches and pains. So that's where you're holding and gripping. Allow yourself time to let go. Breathe into those spaces. Give it permission to let go. And spend time going through your body, especially where you know it gets achy, where you get those little niggles, which ultimately might lead to something deeper. And allow yourself this time, this space, to do nothing. It's very important. We're very good at doing, so allow nothing time. need to think, don't need to action, you don't need to be reactive. It's just space to be nothing, which allows the reset button for you to come back into that space of a clean slate, a blank canvas. Some people call it back to zero. And you take as long as you need to. If you have the time, give yourself extra time. There's always time. And I will leave you to enjoy your Shavasana. And you wake yourself back up when you're ready. Give yourself time to come back to. Allow yourself to wake up gently, don't rush. And I want to thank you for joining me today. It feels loads better for myself, so thank you so much. And have a lovely week. Be aware, notice what's going on for you, all the energies that are moving out there. Notice how they trigger you, how they affect you. Let go what you don't need. Don't carry it with you. And I'll see you again soon. Have a lovely week. Enjoy, everybody. Thanks. And bye for now. Toodle pip.